Welcome to another exciting episode of In the Chute. Calen, what do you got coming at me?
Hey,
Hey,
people,
hey,
people
hey.
ask why, why do northern ranchers need to worry about hay? I think we
So their
talked about
animals
this.
don't die.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this a couple times, but I wanted to use this as an opportunity because we're looking end of April now, and we are already looking at hay for the winter 2023 into 2024. It's a pretty serious thing when you're having to look out 8 months ahead of time. You're trying to schedule, you're trying to purchase, you're trying to coordinate all these things. This last year, you didn't even get all your hay. You ended up getting some of it in the middle of the winter time and kind of refilling. Thankfully, in the middle, had it been too much later, you could have gone with animals without feed, which would have been a whole nother problem. But it's a serious issue. People in the South don't usually have this particular problem, particularly when they are dealing with large herds like cows. Maybe people who own horses and stalls or stables and stuff like that. That might be of concern to them, but when they're producing beef cattle, they don't necessarily have that issue in Texas or Arizona and stuff like that. But we definitely do every year. The Dakotas, Montana, Wyoming. I'm sure there's some places in Minnesota. I know Idaho and Wyoming, or sorry, Washington State. We all have that issue. So I wanted to get your take on why it's so important, why it's something that we worry about 8 months ahead of time, and some of the costs if we don't do it.
Well, I mean, you've got to have feed in those cattle's bellies. I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't eat, you don't live. And wintertime, you got a lot of gestation going on there. They got a calf in them. They're packing a calf they need good nutrients. They need the right kinds of nutrients, a good mineral program. They need all of that intake in order to produce a healthy calf and to keep themselves healthy and of the enough flesh on them that they have reserves that they can, milk, um, and then uh, produce enough nutrient for a calf once it's on the ground during that milking stage until weaning time. So, we're looking at, we're breeding a cow in June for us, um, and they got a calf on them and they got one in them. And then we take that calf that's on the ground off of them in, October. And from October to the next spring in March, April sometime, what are they doing? They're still producing for a calf. I mean,
Right.
these cows are really they're either supporting a calf or in gestation uh, all the time. Within just a couple of months, really, let's say a cow calves in March, uh, middle of March, and she has that calf on her. She's got March to April and April to May, and then into June, she's got probably 2.5 months that she's only supporting herself and a calf instead of herself, a calf, and a fetus. So nutrition is important. Wintertime is it's cold, and it takes a lot of energy. And sometimes when it's 20 below, 30 below, and that wind is blowing, even if it's zero out, and the wind is blowing, it's cold. It can be 25, 30 below with zero ambient temperature here, and that takes energy, and energy you get from feed. Well, when the snow's covering the ground, there's no grazing. It's a matter of
Right.
supplementing those cattle with decent hay, and then mineral program, and perhaps even the supplement of some lick tubs, things like that, which we haven't utilized too much, but it's something we'll consider.
Well, and I think that's something that people don't always understand is that um I've lived in New York where the snowfall can be absolutely atrocious. And I'm not over exaggerating when I say 8 feet within a matter of 8 hours. I went to bed and there's no snow on the ground or just a dusting of snow, almost like frost. And then you wake up the next morning at 6 o'clock in the morning or so, and you've got 6 to 8 feet of snow just sitting out there, and you have to tunnel your way to your car, and hopefully you can get out.
Lake
We
effect
don't
snow,
right
right?
that lake effect snow right off the Great Lakes, but the we don't get really that snowfall in Montana. You could say, a really good winter, we might get that over the course of the winter.
Right.
All the accumulation if it's a really good winter.
We've hit
Um,
200 inches is a kind of a record down, where
okay,
we're at 3,500, 4,000 feet elevation. Uh, but typically, you're looking at 120 inches a year.
right. But that's the stuff that you're not going to see even then. You're not going to see that down south, and so it completely covers the ground. And a lot of the times, what we will experience is snowfall that then melts a little bit and it crusts over and creates
Mhm.
ice. And there's no way those cows are going to get through the ice to what's underneath. And not that even if they did, that it would be really that beneficial, because a lot of that grass under there is dormant. There's not a lot of nutrients left in it anymore. It's just kind of waiting to sprout back up in the springtime. So the importance of having hay is not only for um, access to food, like what we're just saying, but then like you also said with the cold temperatures, sometimes they can bed down in it too and
Mhm.
kind of help keep themselves warm throughout the night if they need to.
Yeah, one of the points you just made is really good about good hay. You got dormant grass, natural, prairie um, grass that they can get to through the snow, and they will. They'll try to dig for it a little bit, and they just kind of like buffalo in a way. They'll push with their face back and forth. Horses will dig for it with their feet. They'll paw for grass, but the grass is, yeah, dormant, and it's the nutrients have been basically baked out of it at that point. That's dried. Where when you're putting up hay, you're trying to put that stuff up when the sugar content is in its highest and the protein is at its best. And so you're cutting it when it's green, storing it, and those nutrients are still staying there. And then that's fed later on. So um, it's even digging a lot, or if you have that grass there, if you can't get to it or you spend energy getting to it, then you're still at best hoping to maintain. You're sure not gaining weight. And that's the whole point we have in the north, or in these northern tier states, or when you're in a state that has to feed for wintertime, you are not trying to make these animals gain weight. You're trying to maintain weight, just maintain their bodies. And it a lot of times takes it all. It takes a lot of significantly good hay in order to make that happen. And sometimes you'll have to feed extra on some of these cold snaps. You figure, I like to figure 30 pounds a day, 28, 30 pounds a day, try to figure to the 30. And there are times when you're feeding, up there around 40 pounds a day on a really cold snap, just to maintain some body weight on these cows.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you. So you got ahead of me. But we've talked about it before, but I think it's always important to remind people that just the sheer volume per day of weight that they need to intake to maintain their frames. And you're saying, roughly 30 pounds a day if it's not super cold, in which case then we'll up the intake so that they can try and maintain those calories and not shiver like crazy, because we've seen cows shiver this year.
Yeah,
So
I shiver.
yeah. With that, we'll take that conversation and put it out to pasture.